All right, today's kind of an exciting day because we've got the F800GS in front of us. This bike, before it became the F850GS and became so massive, was this slender little beast that we have before us today. This is a 2010 F800GS, and you can see how narrow it is. Even with the luggage racks on there, it's not a super wide bike. It's got this narrow stance, legs right through the cockpit there. It has this dirt bike feel, but it cruises down the freeway really well. This one has about 29,000 miles on it. It has the Remus exhaust. It has they call the engine guards, really actually protects the radiator. And it has a TourTech seat. It has an alt-rider rear rack. It has, I believe these are alt-rider, I have no idea. The luggage racks, I'm not sure what brand those are. Might be alt-rider, who heck knows. There's no markings on them. They're the kind that you slide in here, then it clips in the back. They come with a center stand, which is fantastic for changing your tires, oiling your chain. This has the Black Dog skid plate. It has some massive rigid fog lights on it, and these things are bright. They change night to day. It also has the protector for the headlights. These headlights are expensive, so having a protector in front of it in case you're following somebody and they kick up a rock, that protects it. TourTech hand guards, although on this side they actually dropped this bike and broke this hand guard, so it's fixed with a couple of zip ties, which actually is really quite sturdy. Hey, you know, it's a fix. It has some scratches here because of that drop in the dirt there, and that happens anyways. It's got the crash bars. It has the larger foot pegs on it. New chain, new tire. Tire is a Shinko. It is the big block Shinko, which is the 805. Anyways, it also has a rock riser, I don't know, I think that's what they're called. Risers that bring the handlebars up, and you can move them out a little bit, you can move them back a little bit, however you tend to like them. And these bikes are one of my favorite bikes. This week I'm actually reviewing my all-time favorite bikes. I've got two of my all-time favorite bikes, I guess. The F800GS, I've taken one of these down into Mexico. It did absolutely fantastic. Gas mileage can be phenomenal on these. Just absolutely phenomenal. Without your luggage, without a passenger, cruising down the freeway at a moderate speed, I've gotten up to 70 miles per gallon. Seems crazy, but I have. And I think other people have done the same. And so you can expect really good fuel economy out of these bikes, and an awesome ride. Carries the fuel in the back. I'm sure you all know that, but carries the fuel back here, and that sort of evens out, brings that weight back a little bit. I don't think it really matters as far as how high that weight is. It's actually just bringing it back in part of the bike, so all that weight's not carried all on the front tire. It's actually bringing it back, and that really does even out this bike quite a bit. Makes it ride really nice. Let's have a seat on it. And these bikes can be adjusted up and down a bit. And the way it is right now, set up pretty soft for one passenger. I am nearly flat-footed at 6 foot tall, but you know, I've got a 32-inch inseam, so it's not tremendously long legs. I love the riding position of this bike. And power management off-road is just fantastic. What I mean by that is that power band is so even. There's no place where it just kicks in and is overpowering, so you keep really good traction. Sound of the bike, it's got that Remus exhaust, so that sounds really good. One of my all-time favorite bikes, because it's still, for an adventure bike, it's still pretty small. I've taken these bikes, I've got another video in here, maybe I'll put a link in there somewhere, or probably at the end, where I've taken this on all the Black Diamond trails in there's a OHV area around here. It's called Carnegie, and you know, for an adventure bike that you can tour Mexico, Colorado, Utah, do thousands of miles of pavement and still do Black Diamond single track trails, that's pretty rare these days. And especially with the newest one, which is so massive, it's you got to have some confidence to be able to make that bike on those kind of trails. This one does really well in parking lots. It is a simple bike to ride around in parking lots. I find it really nice. You know, as tight as you want to make turns, it does it. It's not an intimidating bike. It's got lots of torque, but not like a real big power curve on it. So it doesn't, it's docile in some ways. And it's so natural to ride. Maybe because I had one for so long, it makes it even more natural. But this is one of my all-time favorite bikes. This is the 2010. Up until they made it the 850, it remained one of my favorite bikes because of the way it handles on and off-road. The newest one, mainly an on-road bike because it's so massive. If I want to ride that big of a bike off-road, I'll go to the 1200 because that's still fun and a challenge, and you just have even more of that torque if it's going to be that heavy. These are still relatively lightweight. Let's bring it out on the country roads and see how it rides on the roads. We'll be right back. All right, now that we're out on the windy road bit here, Livermore, California, there's Marietta's well right there. Kind of a cool place. They had a well here that Joaquin Marietta was known to come to. That could be folklore. Anyways, it's now a winery. And let me talk about a couple of things with this bike. There are a couple of misnomers or rumors about this bike that just aren't actually true. So one of them is stability at speed. They say, oh, these things can be a little unstable at speed and they need a steering damper. That's incorrect. I've had many of these bikes. 5 of them needed new head bearings. And 2 of them, the head bearings were just loose. So it is very common for these things to need head bearings. And the way to check them, if you're looking for this bike, looking for one of these, you're shopping, put it on the center stand because it's got it. It goes up super easy. Just stand on it and pull up, or even kind of forward and up, and it goes back. Okay, super simple. And then have somebody push down on the back of the bike like this, and then turn the steering handlebars from right to left very slowly. And if it notches right in the center, it feels like there's a little notch. Let that truck go by. Okay, so you've got it tilted all the way back off of the front tire, and you start pushing the bars a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, and you can feel just a tiny bit of a notch right there, right in the center. That causes steering to be unstable because it wants to stick forward. Then the bike starts to lean, then it pops that way, pops that way, pops that way, pops that way, and then ends up shaking the bars and becomes unstable. So in that case, yes, it can be. Very easy to replace these head bearings. You do have to pull the forks off, pull the top triple clamps, bottom triple clamps, and there's some videos on how to do that, or you can have somebody do it. If you find that to be the case, All Balls Racing makes some fantastic ball bearings, head bearings for these bikes with new cups, and they're really strong, and most of these bikes end up needing them. This one with 29,000 miles on it is absolutely perfect, so it's probably had them replaced. Not that big of a deal. It's not a deal breaker. And these bikes run really true up to, 100 plus miles an hour, and they still run totally true. If you still get a little bit of a wobble or something, it could be your front tire, it could be out of round, or you could have a bent rim, or your tire's worn very funny. Other than that, really, these are very stable bikes. So anybody that tells you, hey, you need a steering dampener, they probably should check their head bearings. And I've had multiple people, even one of my friends, who've bought a steering dampener for the F800GS, and I just keep telling them, change your head bearings. Well, I don't want to change my head bearings. Like, well, you're just making the problem worse. Anyways, let's see, any other, these can be a tall bike. So, TourTech aftermarket seat. This is a kind of an old seat, but it's really comfortable. Is not all that tall. The stock seat is somewhat tall. The seat concept seat. They make a seat concepts, and then there is another one that has the center is dug out, and that is, I think, Saddleman. The Saddleman seat is pretty tall. It's going to bring it up another half to an inch taller, and so you better be tall if you put that Saddleman seat on. It is so comfortable, though. These TourTech seats are comfortable. They're just mighty expensive. Anything else? I think we should go for a ride. I just love riding these bikes. They are so fun, easy. Oh, hey, there's another thing. So these things really want to stay in the center stand. If you just put your foot, if you can see that, put your foot right in front of the center stand and just kind of push it forward, then it's going to go forward without sliding around. Anyway, you can also do it while you're sitting on the bike. All right, what else do we have? We've got stock. We have heated grips, which is fantastic. These things have the old BMW blinker to the left, blinker to the right, and the cancels over here on the right. This is, since they're not marked, the markings wear off. This is your heated grips over here. You can get hot, medium, headlights, ABS, and this is your program button, so you can go through and see different things on the 80 miles, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know, there's all these different little things you can go through here. 28 miles per gallon, something. 80, I don't know. Anyways, all that kind of stuff. And we're off. For an 800cc motorcycle, they're not a complete rocket ship. They just have really good power from start to finish. There's no surprises in that power band, and that makes it great off-road. A 6-speed transmission. I did do one thing on my bike that is recommended if you do a lot of long-distance travel, which I did on mine. You know, down through Mexico, Colorado, Utah. I actually changed the countershaft sprocket and gave it a little bit taller gearing. So that way at 70 miles an hour, I was at about, 35, 4,000 RPM, something like that, instead of about 5,000 RPM. And that does account for some of the good gas mileage I was getting. And like I said, it has great torque, so it could handle the torque off-road. I had bought a lower countershaft sprocket for lower gearing and one for higher gearing, because I figured when I did the off-road stuff I'd go to lower gearing, and I just never did. It was just fine with a little bit taller gearing. Handling is great. That wouldn't be one of my favorites if the handling sucked, so handling is really good on these bikes. Really seem to be sort of a natural feel, kind of like a dirt bike. You got wide bars. The one thing they make aftermarket windscreens, and I'm not sure why BMW puts this windscreen that comes back at such an angle, but you can get an aftermarket one that goes up straighter. That's what I had on mine, and it just improved the sound in your helmet. If I was about 4'3", I would have a nice quiet ride. But I get kind of the full blast on my helmet with this windscreen. Hello, horsey. Here's where that bump is, but this thing has such plush suspension, you almost don't feel anything. It's got a lot of travel and it's really plush. It really makes for a nice ride on and off road. Some people will find that the front suspension is a little too soft for really hardcore off-road. On mine, I upped the viscosity of the oil in the front forks just to give it a little bit, make it ride a little bit higher in that stroke. It made it for a little bit rougher on-road, but for the real extreme stuff off-road, it did fantastic. That's about the only change you really would need to make if you're doing hardcore off-road. But they make a plethora of parts for this. You can get, aftermarket fork springs, shocks, I mean, just anything you want to get for this bike, it seems like they have. Aftermarket support is huge. As you can see, this has so many aftermarket parts. I think this guy went to the TourTech store and bought everything TourTech had. Trying to think of another downside to these bikes. Well, these bikes aren't made anymore because they're making the 850, and so that's a big downside because I wish they still made them. So you're not going to be able to get a brand new one. You know, all the years are actually really good. People claim that the first year, 2000, I think it was 2009, had some issues. I think they just had some production issues, because I actually had a 2009 and it was perfect. I rode that for 30 or 40,000 miles. No issues whatsoever. We could talk about the cam chain, which can be noisy on these bikes. And so when you're looking at these bikes, did I go over this already? No, but when you look at one of these bikes, yeah, the head bearings is something to look at, and then the cam chain tensioner. Well, how are you going to know about that? Well, start it up cold. So when you go to look at one of these, call them. This is not a deal breaker, I'm just telling you, when you go to look at one of these bikes, and we'll just give an example. This one's already warmed up, but when you're listening to this bike, your cam chain is right, it runs right up through here, down here, up in here, and there's a cam chain tensioner right on this side of the motor. Is it on this side, or is it on the, yeah, it's right here. I can actually see it right there. So the cam chain tensioner is a little hydraulic unit, so when you start the bike when it's cold, you can expect to hear the cam chain for a second, just a little rattle. But if you go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, that noise should be completely gone, and it should be a quiet motor. If it's not, then that means the cam chain is and the cam chain tensioner is no longer pushing the cam chain. And they make ones that are manual adjust, and you actually unbolt this one and put the new one in, and you can actually adjust how tight it adjusts on that cam chain, and it quiets it down. I actually ran one of those on mine. Had a lot of miles on it, so I just thought that that would be a good thing to add, and it kept it quiet. This one doesn't make any noise when I first started up, so it's actually probably been replaced. That's a common thing to hear, that cam chain, but you really, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, that cam chain sound should be gone on a cold motor. If it's warm, you should never hear it. Yeah, so if you go fill the motor and it's warm and you start it up and you hear that cam chain, then you're definitely either going to have to put on a manual cam chain tensioner or replace the cam chain itself in its entirety. So we don't really want to have to do that. That's kind of a big job. The cam chain tensioner, that's no big deal. You don't want to have to. The cam chain, that's more of a job. Anything else? Or anything else? I don't know. Let's ride some more. Life expectancy on these bikes, man, they are one reliable motor. I just haven't seen a real failure on these bikes that wasn't caused by, you know, abuse or just not putting oil in it. They hold plenty of oil and last a long time. I have no reservation buying one of these with like 40,000 miles on it. No problem. 50,000 miles, no problem. And 100,000 miles, you know, it would cause me grief, because I'm not sure it'd be that easy to sell when I wanted another bike. But these motors will go and go and go and go, and all the parts are pretty easy to replace and fix. So a simple bike, not a lot of electronics to go wrong. Heated grips are nice, which I'm going to turn these heated grips on now. We'll turn them on high and see how well they work. Yeah, we got some heated grips going now. That's great. That's pretty quick. I'll pull it over to the side of the road here. Take one last look at the bike. This is an easy bike to maintain. Everything seems real simple. You know, taking a tire off, super easy. You know, changing the tires, changing brake pads are super easy. And they really made this bike to be an easy bike to work on the road. With the center stand, that makes it even simpler, just because you can pop it up on the center stand, pull that rear wheel off, you can check the chain. Got a new chain on here. Oh, hey, what's that? And then the motor's a really dead simple motor. That, my friends, is the F800GS. This is the 30 years anniversary edition, which you get the white with the cool paint scheme there. So that's it, F800GS. Boom. All right, I think I said I'd talk about my favorite bike, although this is one of my favorite bikes. I have lots of, I like these bikes, I love these bikes, and they're all in my top favorites. This is one of them. Here's a bunch of photos. While we look at these photos, hey, if you got a chance, subscribe, hit that like button if you can, and let's get into my favorite bike, which is the KTM. Hold on a second. Well, they make a bunch of them. So it's the 1190, it's the 1090, it's the 1290, which are basically all the same bike, and they've done a little bit to the motor or electronics, or both. And so my favorite of all those bikes was the 1190 until they stopped making that, made it hard to find. And it is now the 1090, which is basically the same bike, just a little bit less stroke, and doesn't have all the electronics of the 1290. And of course they make the R and the S in the 1290, and they made that in the 1190 as well. I prefer the R version, which is more off-road capable. And right now, my favorite bike of all time, of every bike, if I only could have one bike, it is the KTM 1090 Adventure R. Okay, that said, I'm going to talk about one of my least favorite bikes, but I'm not going to do it here. So please hit that subscribe button, and we'll get into that in one of my next videos.